Jeff, you broke this story. It's only 1 death and 3 injuries that we know of, but is this what will possibly turn into a long list of transparency failures by VW?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, this was sort of our attempt to find out if there was anything missing. We already knew they had a lower reporting rate than anybody else in the industry, any other large automaker, by a significant amount. So we thought, let's just look and see if we can find lawsuits that aren't in the database. We did this before with Honda, and we were able to find them again with Volkswagen. It's not exhaustive. We didn't look at hundreds of lawsuits, but the fact that we looked at 13 and found 4 is an indication that there probably are some missing beyond what we found.
But, Jeff, you mentioned Honda, which is important. It's not unique to Volkswagen. Do we have any sense of how many other auto companies might have this similar problem?
Well, 2 have already, this year, accepted responsibility for it. We don't know what's going to happen yet to Fiat Chrysler because they haven't finished looking at that. Last year, Ferrari was fined for this. The regulators have asked all the automakers to look at this database and see if they're in compliance, because there is some concern they haven't taken it seriously. When you look at the numbers, everyone, which we point out in the story, has increased their reporting. So people are reporting more coincidentally around the time the regulators have started to look at it. So they're finding more and looking harder to see if they're there.
Jeff, how do we move this story forward? What do we need to look at to figure out whether this was just an oversight or whether there was real malintent there?
Well, there really doesn't need to be malintent. The point is the diligence is supposed to be there, because at least 2 of these involved airbags. If you're missing, right now in the context of what's going on with airbags, you don't want to miss any incidents that suggest allegations that airbags are failing, for example, because in the Takata situation, there's not very many deaths, there's not very many injuries, and every one is important in trying to determine what's going on. So anything you miss is a problem, and the regulation doesn't say, well, they didn't mean to, so they don't have to do it. It's pretty much meant that you need to really take a hard line and look at this. If you get served a lawsuit, it should be in this database.
And so let's distinguish among the units here. Was this a mistake made by Volkswagen North America, or does this go all the way back to Wolfsburg?
It's hard to know because we don't know exactly where these things are cataloged and where the reporting is. It's probably done in the U.S. They won't comment on the lawsuits. They're doing their own independent audit now. Since we brought this up a couple weeks ago, they have agreed to do an audit, third-party audit, based on a recommendation from U.S. regulators to see how they're doing. They said they'll look at this and everything else as part of this audit. So we don't really know where this was done or where it was missed.
Jeff, what are the possible fines or penalties for Volkswagen?
Well, it ranges. Ferrari was fined $3.5 million, but Honda was fined $70 million. So it depends on how much they want to come down on them and how much of a mea culpa the automakers make, how cooperative they are. There's a lot of latitude. The maximum is technically $35 million, but in Honda's case, they said, well, you did it twice, so they found a way to make it even more.
Jeff, is it possible to say that this is just something that you found because Volkswagen is already under the magnifying glass? Might we find something similar, other discrepancies at other manufacturers if we applied the same interrogation?
Actually, we've been looking at this for more than a year. We found Honda first. We mentioned that Chrysler looked like it needed to, was underreporting. They've now said they are. There's several automakers. If you look at some of the coverage we've had, we mentioned Nissan as being underreporting compared to their peers. So that could come up with other automakers. It's not that difficult to mess up on this database. There's a sense that maybe this wasn't taken as seriously over time because maybe the regulators weren't looking at it.
Jeff Green from Bloomberg News out in Detroit, thank you very much for joining us.